Hello and welcome to the Minority Arts Appreciation Society podcast. So we're ticking all the boxes and providing a much needed minority perspective to popular internet discourse. I'm Josh and I lead the music discussions.
I'm Mattie and I lead the film discussions.
And today we're reviewing Fiona Apple's. Okay, Mattie, I want you to do a dramatic reading of the album title. Do you have it in front of you?
I've got it right in front of me.
Go for it.
When the pawn hits the conflicts, he thinks like a king. What he knows throws the blows when he goes to the fight. And he'll win the whole thing before he enters the ring. There's no body to battle when your mind is your might. So when you go solo, you hold your own hand. And remember that depth is the greatest of heights. And if you know when you stand, then you know where to land. And if you fall, it won't matter because you'll know that you're right.
But sometimes you'll be wrong. But that's okay. Wonderful. That was wonderful.
I tried.
When the Pawn, 1999, November 9th. So this would have come out like 2 weeks before I literally came into existence.
Whoa.
That's crazy, right? So before I think before I speak, Mattie.
There's no visual element, Josh.
I'm gonna edit the silence out.
I know, I'm kidding.
Before we get to me asking you what your history of Fiona Apple is, or your preconceived notions of the woman herself, I just want to run through kind of some light context for this album. I don't think this is going to be as context heavy as Magnolia. I just don't think Fiona documents her life in the same way PTA was doing with like a literal documentary accompanying Magnolia. But yeah, this whole album was produced by the legendary John Bryan. Are you familiar with John Bryan?
I'm not familiar with John Bryan.
Well, John Bryan is like one of the big producers. He produced the new Mac Miller album.
Okay.
He like after Mac Miller his
posthumous.
John Bryan it was mostly John Bryan doing the work of piecing the album together, and it was a fantastic album. He did a great job, and he's also done countless of classic albums and films. So a few films he did were Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, a cohort of Anderson. He did Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind and Synecdoche, New York with
wow.
And he did Lady Bird with Gerwig. And he also did the other guys, the Mark Wahlberg comedy, if you remember that.
Those last two were such a step down. Yes, that is me equating the other guys to Lady Bird.
I thought
Lady Bird's good.
Yeah, Lady Bird's good.
And that's all that needs to be said about it. Shut up!
The albums he did lots of work on Kanye's Late Registration.
What?
Do you remember in We Major when Kanye goes into like spoken word and he says, "And John Bryan on the keys right now"?
Oh my god!
Yeah,
this guy is.
He must have been looking at John Bryan playing the piano and gave him a shout out. So yeah, he also worked on Frank Ocean's Blonde, and he worked on Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer. So.
Okay, this guy's fucking
quite
cool.
The resume. The resume. In terms of the poem that is the title of the album, which, by the way, held the Guinness Book of World Records for like 7 years for the longest album title. She wrote the poem in response of being made fun of in a Spin kind of magazine, or at least like letters that were sent to and published in Spin. I haven't seen the Spin article, but fuck you, Spin. And apparently, Rolling Stone also like attacked Fiona Apple, and they were very critical of her "The World Is Bullshit" speech that she gave at the '97 VMA. I sent the script for you to watch. What did you? Because I kind of wanted to give you a sense of like what Fiona's public image would have been at this point, like how. In the pop culture, if you were like a teen growing up in the '90s, how you'd view Fiona, like how what do you think about this clip of her, the '97 VMAs?
I think it's really interesting because aged kind of poorly, I would say.
Mm.
Like it, yeah, I think from a very 2020 mindset, it seems very like edgy, but I think that was just so the climate of the 90s, or just what the sort of 90s was really needing. Like it's easy to underestimate how like weird a time it was and how kind of authoritarian it all was, like kind of in relation to today especially. So I think it had its time, but it's kind of great as well. Like it is just pretty great seeing someone just reject the whole thing in that way. I think it, like, I have definitely always seen her as someone who doesn't care, like, to any regard. Like, she's just one of those people just doing her thing. She's only playing the game so far as she gets to make the stuff she wants to make, which is cool.
Yeah, I didn't think it was edgy. I thought it was very moving, and I like in the coming episode, the coming 2020 boxes, we kind of mentioned Ariana Grande, and Ariana Grande is so snug in like celebrity. Like I don't know how she actually feels, but she is like built to be a celebrity. Like it's kind of impossible to think of her not getting out of that, you know. And Fiona was just as famous as Ariana, like at her peak
Yeah.
in the late 90s. I mean, she was dating Paul Thomas Anderson. Her music was some of the most popular, like female vocal, you know, pop
Singer-songwriter.
singer-songwriter coming out. But this is a person who's always been incredibly uncomfortable by the glitz and glamour of like Hollywood, and she describes like how horrible shooting music videos was very early on in her career. She was very hyper aware of how kind of sexualized she was being, and she was like 17 or 18, like when her debut album came out. She was very young, and she dealt with like lots of like depression and eating disorders, and I think lots of that, you know, that girls go through, and guys as well, and other, it is influenced by believing that this world is what decides what's cool or not, and what is beautiful or not.
Absolutely.
This world being Hollywood, being show business. To her standing on that stage and saying, "Yeah, this world is bullshit. Like, don't listen to us. Like, it's all bullshit. Just fucking do your thing." And which is what the album title of this kind of reinforces, of just kind of like being okay with yourself and being alone. I found it really moving. And
I think
I always really admired about Fiona, like especially like now, like she's really wormed her way out of celebrity. I don't know how she did it, but like if you look at all of, I showed you the video of her recently reading the album title, and there's loads of those videos like that uploaded on Fiona Apple Rock's YouTube channel, which I don't know what it is. I think it's like the Tumblr. I don't know if she sends them videos. I don't know how they get these Fiona. But, it's like a fan page, and those videos, like if you can go through them, so many of them, they're so like there's her shooting herself in her room with her dog, and she doesn't feel like a celebrity anymore. They're so like earthy and regular, and so it's amazing that she managed to make her way out of that world, and she never felt like someone who was entirely comfortable in that world. Whereas I can't imagine Ariana Grande in like 15 years time, recording videos in like a house in the middle of nowhere in like in America, and like they're really low key. Like she's always going to be Ariana Grande in the same way that Lady Gaga will always be Lady Gaga, and Madonna will always be Madonna. You know.
I think there is something very, like, I don't want to say cold about how she treats the world, but it's this very like, because that sort of seems like I'm accusing her of I guess like performatism and just being like rude, but I think that it's this perfect reaction to the infestation of people's lives, and particularly hers, especially as hard as it's been. So I think like it's so telling as well, the reaction to how cold she is in the media was like, because it's all part of this system that is constantly trying to get you to conform and to
Yeah.
be this expected person that everyone needs, that will make the most money as well. So there's something so respectful about it, and also way more genuine as well than like just kind of being nice about it.
Yeah.
She's being nice, she's being lovely in this speech, but also cold and commanding.
I do think the like we covered this in the Magnolia episode, so go back and listen to that if you want more content. I do think that kind of how she was framed in the media as like the problem child of Hollywood, the neurotic, crazy girl, you know, who was unruly and like up her own arse, basically, is basically the media's equivalent to telling women to smile more and not kind of not taking them seriously when they're upset. Because of course, you know, so many male kind of artists are as brooding as Fiona, but not treated as hysterical in a way that I think was in the public eye. But anyway, onto the album itself, When the Pawn. This was I'll start with like my history with the album and then move on to yours. And then there's a question I want to ask you about what it's like for you to listen to this album. Because this was an album that I really got into when I say in sixth form, so I would have been around like 16. And I think I can't remember which one I heard first. What happened? The song Shadow Boxer from a Tidal album, which is a huge single from the album. That was the first song that really opened me up to Fiona, and I really adored that song. And I think this and I Look Real pretty much at the same time. I got into both of them, and I think I enjoyed them pretty much immediately. But then it was like a year later on, after kind of that initial encounter, if you will, that it really like clicked for me. And for me, I can't disassociate this album from the feeling of heartbreak, because this was like one of my shelter albums when I was going through like romantic struggles, like during the latter half of my teenage years. Like this was one of my bedrocks. I'd go into this album and feel everything, and I was wondering, like, you know, what is your experience with Fiona Apple, and two, what does heartbreak music sound like to happy to people who aren't heartbroken? Like, because I generally think it's like when I listen to breakup albums in the middle of a breakup, they genuinely sound different to how they sound if I'm like happy in a relationship. So like, yeah, those are two things I'm curious about. So what's your history, and like what's it, as someone who isn't going through a breakup currently, what is listening to this album like for you?
Yeah. Okay. So my history with Fiona Apple is very short. I think I became essentially aware of who she was specifically this year with the release of Fetch the Bolt Cutters, which you kept saying you had plans for Fiona Apple specifically. So, and I didn't think we were talking about but you were explicit. We weren't talking about Fetch the Bolt Cutters. So I wanted to save that album, and I am saving that album until I'd heard something from her earlier works, just because I think as I became aware of her and how much of a big deal she was in the 90s versus now, and you're right, she's absolutely by no means not a nobody, but at the same time, like, she has escaped the celebrity, which is kind of the dream of being like an artist of any medium, like literally just being regarded for your work and getting critical acclaim, but also not having to deal with everything. Like, I'm so happy for her in that regard. So I think my like perception of her forming over this year is one of like really great respect just for how boldly she presents herself, but also at the same time so authentically. I think there is such a stigma on just doing what you want and then as a result being called pretentious. Like, I think it's very obvious when people are just being themselves and being weird versus performatism. And so yeah, I think she is one of those. I think she is a strider. A bold. She has made bold strides in keeping that rhetoric down.
And before you move on to responding to my question, like, The thing with like Fetch the Bolt Cutters being as huge as it was completely fucking surprising to me because her fame kind of does ebb and flow. Because I remember like back in 2015 when I was kind of re-getting to music, Idle Wheel had come out 3 years before that, and that was like fucking huge when it dropped, like in the music community. Like that was like album of the year, accolades, all that. And then like, Life of Pablo comes out, To Be a Butterfly comes out, all these albums come out that white music nerds online obsess over, and it kind of gets forgotten, like in the midst of the 2010s music. So it was really weird when Fetch the Bolt Cutters came out, and Pitchfork gave her a 10, which ruined the whole Discord. And seeing her be like the thing you see on every music meme page for like a good month, and like everyone was just obsessed with Fetch the Bolt Cutters. So it was really exciting and wonderful, even though it kind of was sad to see it like see the opposite side of that, which is the retaliation, the it's overrated, it's not actually that good, and the edgy opinion that has to follow that.
I hate the backlash so much.
But whatever. And I guess the second part, like what does Fiona Apple's music sound like? Even though ironically this is not a breakup album, this is a very sad relationship album.
Yeah, yeah.
What does it sound like to someone who is neither in a breakup or in a sad relationship?
It sounds like, for me, untapped emotion is how I would describe it. I think there's a lot of emotions that breakups connect with that are really easy to forget are there at all times within a person, single or not. Like, I guess there's like 3 stages here. There's like single, in a relationship, and in the midst of a breakup. And like, I think albums like this bring up hugely significant emotions for all 3 of those states, but I know exactly what you mean. This album, oh my god, I am very happy in my relationship right now, but I want a breakup just to I don't want to get into my opinion, but oh my god, I wish I've had breakups, and if I'd had this, oh my god, I think I would have been fine.
Yeah, well, like I would just, I mean, it's obvious for listeners of the show that this is one of my favorite albums. This is one of my 10 out of 10 albums. I think it's phenomenal. So I'm more interested in this episode being Mattie thinks. I'm just so curious as to like how this would be received for someone who isn't in the cult like I am. And yeah, like when I was writing my notes for this, it was almost impossible. It was almost like I've listened to this album hundreds of times, and there are songs in this album that just don't even sound like songs to me anymore. In the same way that when a new Anderson .Paak song comes out, you put it on and you're listening to a song. But songs like Love Ridden and Get Gone, like when they play, I'm sent to a place, which is like my bedroom in London at that moment when my heart was broken at like a certain time. And they're not even songs, they're more like memories to me now. Like, as I hope it doesn't sound pretentious, but I'm trying to explain, when you've like had an album embedded in your life for such a long time, it's so hard to like critically distance yourself from it.
I think Weezer. Yeah. My one is so much worse than this. Like, I think if I'm gonna have any of those albums, it's Pinkerton.
Yeah, sure.
So I trust me, I know exactly how you feel. So, I can just
kind of, yeah. So one thing. So I guess like recommending or getting you to listen to this album that's so close to me, so dear to me. One thing I was scared about is the very, very, very 90s production of this album. So if you're at all into like 90s alternative music, pretty much all of it was like sometimes good, sometimes awkward, electronic production over like kind of rock inspired stuff, right? Like there's everything in the 90s had to be sleek and cool and hip and electronic. And I think some of that bleeds into how this album is produced. And you'll remember like Amy Mann's music in Magnolia actually quite into that production style.
Yes, I immediately was thrown back to Magnolia.
Yeah, I was worried. I was like, as someone who isn't in the cult, like, will this sound dated to her? So I'm curious, like, how does, I guess, how did this hit you, like, in general?
Yeah.
Like, what was it like? I'm very curious.
Okay, so I think what impressed me most about this is this kind of self-loathing sense of disaffection that she seems to have with her own pain. And I think that's where a lot of catharsis of this comes from. Like there are obvious moments of tenderness sonically, I mean, like in her voice and in like with like strings coming in, and the whole album is very obviously emotional. But throughout, I feel like the sort of very I don't know how to. I haven't figured out how to describe this, but the very weighty sound of the piano and everything, it feels like, and her vocal performance, it feels like being trapped in a, not trapped, but going to a motel room, drunk off your mind and screaming all the things that you should have been saying for years or however long. And the self-loathing that comes with that is so powerful, because it seems like a person racked with guilt for simply feeling the way that they do about this, but also layered on top of that is this disaffection that I mentioned about simply being tired of feeling that way. And that's where this dichotomy comes in between needing to express these emotions versus the fact that you felt these emotions for so long that you're numb to them anyway. And I think, I honestly need to digest this album emotionally mostly, I guess, is how this hit me, because this is not a criticism, but sonically it is so focused, and I will get into this album sonically. I adore just the tone of it and everything. It is so powerful but vulnerable at the same time. So what was I saying? But yeah, I think this takes you to places, but also providing you with a very accessible approach to experiencing those important breakup emotions.
Yeah. I
I
I
hope that
do.
was clear.
No, I completely see. I really like what you said about how it sounds like the angst of this album, she hasn't come to terms with it, and she's almost like annoyed of it and ashamed by it. And I do think
Exactly.
this album is a lot about like repressing and pulling away, and like she can't validate her own feelings. And a lot of that, at least in the lyrical content of this album, seems to stem from being in a relationship where she doesn't feel like her emotions are being validated much, where she constantly feels condescended to. There are lines like well, I mean, the whole song Limp, about
Yeah.
kind of a partner who's kind of likes that she's quote unquote, broken, and wants to quote unquote lick her wounds and like save her, I guess, and her emotions being viewed as kind of this kind of thing that they can fix and then be rewarded for doing that. Or or a mistake where she's tired of people wanting her to be good and happy all the time, and she just wants to like be a fuck up for a bit and like not feel ashamed of that. But there's lots of moments in this album uh, about not having your feelings validated by the people around you, but also a lot of shame around her own feelings, like Fast as You Can, and
Yeah.
On the Bound to Your Love. Like these songs about feeling like she's unable to let love in, and feeling ashamed of that distance inside of her, between her and her lover, right? Um, and it's a really interesting thing about like the emotional, like we'll see more of it when we go to like the Idol Wheel in our next Fiona Apple episode. Really interesting seeing like the emotional arc of her career. You get this like very young 20s, angry, I hate my emotions, I don't know what's going on vibe here. And then Idler Will is very much like someone who's done a bit of therapy and has accepted the bad feelings, but is still like inside of the bad feelings, expressing them in a way that's very open and like acknowledging. And there's, in my opinion, Idler Will is not a shameful album at all. It's just very like open album. Underneath Fetch the Bolt Cutters, which is like Fiona Apple is now everybody's mom. and she is wise with you, and she's completely like transcended to like this place of like self-acceptance, and she's gonna tell you how to beat the bullies who are making you feel bad, and so like but going back to this early point is so dark, and I find this album like the fact that there's a Saint Vincent line where she sings I guess that's just me, I guess that's just how I'm built. I try to write you a love song, but it comes out all sick. And I feel like this whole album is like trying to write someone a love song, but it comes out all sick. Like the fact that she wrote this in a relationship, but it feels like a breakup album, and every track is about just being so lonely in how she feels. Is really telling. And this album, she has this like the way she sings like really caught me by surprise when I first got into it, because I was expecting kind of a not dainty, but like a kind of like blissful vocalist, like a very like easy vocalist. But she has this like bitter, jaded growl in like
edge
every song. When she's doing a calm singing, it feels so tense and like it's just about to explode. and then there are so many moments where it just goes so raspy and low and vicious, and like this I like you listen to it now, I really caught on to like this. She is so vicious on this album, forceful and aggressive, and there's something really cathartic in that. But this album can only be described as like frustrating, like in terms of like it's a frustrated feeling that's being communicated. And that really resonates with me.
The frustration on like "You're All I Need," like there's just something about that kind of cry for simplicity. I don't think she's really like, it's obviously not her celebrating in a mantra that this person is all that she needs. It seems more like she's whittled her own world down to the point where this person is all she really needs, and she's so upset at that fact and the loneliness that brings on. It's horrible.
There's also a sense that she doesn't believe this line. The song sounds like a Bond theme and just how epic and scope it is to the string. But when she's singing, baby, lay your head on my lap one more time, tell me you belong to me, it is bittersweet. Like it isn't.
Oh no, it's not romantic
in any way, and it's not romantic. It's scary and sad, and in many ways, I feel like this track will kind of be. We're not going to talk about Fetch the Bolt because it's on the review, but the first track of Fetch the Bolt has felt like a response to this. Well, that first track is called "I Want You to Love Me," and it's a very like it's basically mocking this kind of song, where the hook of that song is "I want you to love me, I want you to love me," and she's kind of like making fun of that kind of idealization of like, if someone loves me, everything will be okay. And that track is very like, that album's got very like snarky, light-hearted edge to it, of like the retrospective of someone who's like in their 40s.
I can imagine.
But this track, it might be in the same sentiment of like "You're All I Need," which is the same as "I Want You to Love Me," but it's deadly serious. It's horrifying. And I think it really does capture like when you're heartbroken, there is it is a physical pain in your stomach, and there is a real feeling that I can't eat, I can't sleep, and if this one person just treated me right, or liked me, or loved me, I would be okay. But deep down, that you need more fixing than that. There's a line, tell me it's all going to be all right. I believe that it isn't. Like, there's a real sense that, and there's plenty of moments in this album, such as The Way Things Are, which is like, even if I got like the perfect love, I actually need to I just sort myself out, because I wouldn't know what to do with it, So yeah, this album sounds like a deeply unhappy person in a relationship, and how everything in that lens is kind of malformed, I guess. It's a really bleak album.
It's very dour. Going into To Your Love, it's just a complete contradiction as well. And I think this is where this sort of distant feeling started coming into me, because it really feels like she's removed herself from the ability to feel capable of being loved. But I think what's so important about this album, and about breakup emotions in general, is that split that dichotomy between like the desperate urge for love, but also just this kind of this feeling of aging that this album has as well. Like I feel like I've been dropped into this story in the final chapter, and it's almost doesn't become sad because I feel so like introduced at the last minute, and it becomes cathartic instead. It feels like I'm excising something awful. I'm glad I don't ever seem to get that much of an understanding of kind of the evil of this album. There's obviously other evils going on, but the sort of antagonist, as it were, I'm glad it is just this horrible entanglement that we know must be excised, but we know cannot be.
Yeah, and I guess before we move on to like favorite and least favorite tracks, I do just want to give a shout out to Paper Bag, which is like the beacon of light in the middle of the album before you're thrown right back into just misery. Oh man, what an incredible song Paper Bag is. Like this whole album is quite jazzy, but most of the jazz is like really dark and sad saxophones, like noir-esque. But Paper Bag is like the most unabashedly joyous songs, and one thing I find really interesting is the music video for Paper Bag is set in a hotel like foyer, and he's dancing with lots of young boys, like children, like 5-year-olds, like and they're like dancing around her and pursuing her, and you know, and now obviously the line, I thought you was a man but you were just a little boy. And remember, Paul Thomas Anderson followed her to Miami and approached her in the hotel lobby. I wonder, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe something's going on there. But yeah, that line, "Hunger hurts, but starving works when it comes so much to love," is the most like, and how it's delivered in like an uplifting way of like, hey, hurt for a bit, but you need to be alone. Like, it's gonna be okay eventually, but right now you can't like, you know, their warmth would only make you colder when they're gone, you know, like you need to let this person go, like and then you will be okay. Like there is a real, even though this album's so bleak, there is a real sense of like letting go of love is what's going to help you in the end, and I really love that message.
I think it would be so easy to see this track as like a sort of damning moment, but because this album is so much about the necessity to move on, especially with this song, lyrics like "I thought it was a bird, but it was just a paper bag." That's such a like. I feel like that's directly that Fiona Apple in that moment, sort of directly laughing at herself. Like it's essentially saying that she was foolish to see a paper bag and believe it was a bird. And it's just pointing and laughing at her own stupidity for believing in, not stupidity, but I guess naivety, for believing in something that was so flimsy. And it's so amazing and talented. You must be so amazing and talented to make that hopeful. But like it's just the fact that you're believing that way that you're seeing the situation that way. That is hopeful.
And another thing that, like, in terms of her lyric writing that's changed is she would never write lines like, "I know that I'm a mess that you don't want to clean up," which is so sad. And like, if you are in your early 20s, like, you 100% DV yourself as a burden, at least if you're of a certain position on the world and you never validate your feelings. And it's like, yeah, that is so raw, but also presenting it with a hope-lifting context as well as the context of the rest of her career. It's nice to know that this ends eventually. Yeah, what a lovely song. But yeah, moving on to favorite and least favorite tracks. Would you like to go first?
Yay! Thank you.
And you'll recommend.
Okay, awesome. So I love all of this album, but the second half just goes fucking hard. Like, it's another level, right? So
it's really fucked up.
Yeah. Like I actually really wanted to just mention this. Just I think the breakup, like, anxiety. This album doesn't feel anxious, but it does feel like it's coming to a head. And I think in
terms of like mental health analogies, it feels manic.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like A Mistake is the beginning of that. In songwriting style, it's not manic in the way that others are, but it feels like the trigger. And then we begin with Fast as You Can, and all of the bitterness, all of the anger, and all the pain seems to develop in crescendo towards this point. Like just how much faster this song immediately is. It immediately perks you up. Not that you're bored by this point, but it immediately tweaks your ears. And then you go into this insanely heavy and sticky piano bridge that shatters your world. And I was amazed by this song simply because I feel like it really brought the album to a level, especially with Mistake just before it. It really brought it to a wonderful like story of breakup emotions, because I think that's what most breakup music, when it's amazing, it excels at, is it takes you through that same journey, through that catharsis, because I think catharsis is what people are really looking for, and it begins with this song.
Do you take Fast as You Can as a breakup song?
Oh no, not a breakup song, no.
Yeah.
But I think it's bringing it into that sense of catharsis, and like as a part of a wider album, it kind of brings everything. It's starting to bring everything to a head in the way that it always feels like in the midst of heartbreak.
Sure, yeah.
So The Way Things Are is up next, and God, I spend a lot of this song just itching for the I guess instrumental refrain after the chorus. It's so like soaring and gorgeous with so many different elements interacting. These kind of like almost wailing guitars, strings coming through, and other strings as well. It's incredible, and it just perfectly follows on from Fast as You Can. And emotionally, I think it's amazing for just beginning to feel like letting go. In the first verse, you have lyrics like I wouldn't know what to do with another chance begins the song, and lyrically the song is sort of concerned with the sort of ebb and flow of how things of how it is at this point in her relationship. I feel like more and more she has become conscious of the complete back and forth that they have. Songs like Limp address the situation of like gaslighting and how their relationship has sort of become a game of like cat and mouse, of this person baiting her into feeling a certain way and then exploiting that for personal gain. Whereas this is just so like backed up by the strength of the instrumentals that at this point she's just completely disaffected with it, and she doesn't seem to care, saying, so keep on calling me names, keep on, and I'll keep kicking the crap till it's gone. And it's just like she hasn't completely separated herself from it, but she's past the point of caring.
And it's also that sense that like she feels like she deserves to be, like, her prickly kind of disposition, she's ashamed of it, and she feels like I am better here in this bitter place where I'm pushing you away constantly. This is like this is good. Like I'm so used to this that it's now good. Which I feel like we get kind of a sequel to that in Idler Wheel with the song Left Alone. Where she sings how can I expect anyone to love me when all I do is beg to be left alone. So yeah, this dealing with this kind of like the contradiction of wanting intimacy but also being so scared of fucking it up that you push people away, you know?
No, I think you're sorry. Oopsie daisy. Yeah, and finally, my favorite track is not my favorite track. My final favorite track is On the Bound. I think this album perfectly brings you into the point that it needs to. There is such a delicate surgery to be done here with it, in dropping you into this point of a relationship. And I think with this, she showcases the full range of emotions that are about to become, as well as sonically as well. You're All I Need really captures the anger, I think, of the second half, whereas the verses are much more subdued and but still bouncing with that complete sort of sass that she has. I think that's the sort of thing that I've been
it's
looking
that
for.
jazzy element of the album.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. The sort of blues and the lower scale notes that she uses throughout are so impressive because it just backs her up throughout it. And the line, "It's true, I do imbue my blue unto myself, I make it bitter," is such a lyrical tongue twister, but I think it's so beautiful in just articulating how, yes, like her problem. I don't, because I think it's it's so beautiful in articulating the fact that she blames herself for so much of this, and I think that's where a lot of the conflict of this album comes from, is like her recognizing that that's not the case, and but also at the same time in the way she delivers it with just, "It's true, I do imbue blue onto myself." It sounds callous, like just like a careless admission that she's accepted for herself, which kind of it illustrates the extremity to which it's gone to.
Yeah, and also that, like you mentioned, the constant kind of refusal to validate her own emotions and blaming herself for them, and basically dismissing them at points. I like they even feels like there's interplay of that theme in how the instrumental is used here, where like she have the very tender, quiet moment of "Tell me it's all going to be all right. I believe that it isn't," which is followed by a very like jaunty jazz instrumental and horns, which is so irreverent and feels like even the song itself is like dismissing that intimate kind of vulnerable moment and like going back to this like hard exterior, this like fuck you vibe that she has. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's amazing.
What's the least favorite track?
My least favorite track was "To Your Love." I honestly don't dislike this track. I really
okay.
No, I really
yeah, can we kick Mattie off the podcast?
What am I supposed to say? It's all good. All good.
You go. I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't have a lot to say about this because I think that's ultimately my issue. I think there's so much here beautifully that adds to the tone of the album and the story, and I think this is where we really get a sense for who she is. I feel like this develops her character so much for the rest of the album. And like in the verse saying lines like, "I would have warned you, but what's really the point?" And it's amazing in that regard, but it just doesn't do as much me sonically as the rest of the album does, because I do find this an incredibly sonically engaging album.
Sure.
And so yeah, those are my three favorites and least favorite track. And that, I imagine you'll want to talk about "To Your Love" in your own time, unless you have anything to say now.
No, it's not on my favorite list. I was.
You're just sad.
I mean, yeah. Unless you picked my literal least favorite track, I would have been angry about what you picked.
Yeah, I got that vibe.
Protect my baby. Would you recommend this album to the good listeners at home?
No. Yeah, no. Of course I would. I think it's pretty fucking fantastic. I found it surprisingly. I didn't expect this to be as accessibly cathartic as it was. I felt like it would throw me more into the deep pain of it, but I'm so glad that that's not what this is. I think there's something so wonderful about how immediately recognizable all of the emotions on this are, and not just in the lyrics. I feel like I've talked about that a lot, but this sounds like angry heartbreak. And that's the highest compliment I can give it. I can't recommend this album enough.
Wonderful. And like that kind of like angry heartbreak description, this album in spirit reminds me so much of FK Twig's first album and the following EP. And,
Mm-hmm.
and like when artists like that put out albums like that while
Yeah.
publicly dating people like Robert Pattinson and people, I'm like, what did Robert Pattinson do to create some of the most painful music I've ever listened to?
Oh.
It's pretty fascinating. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'll go.
It
Jesus
feels
Christ.
like I'm reading a gossip magazine.
I will go through my favorite and least favorite track, and if I recommend it or not. Um, so I'll go in order, but the last track is my hands down favorite track. Okay, so first off, track 4, Love Ridden. Yeah, like Mattie said, from track 4 and onwards, this album is absolutely unrelenting. Love Ridden is one of the most painful, bitter heartbreak songs I've ever heard. I can't begin to tell you how much the song got me through, and like the sad nights staring out of the window listening to Love Ridden by Fiona Apple. The line, I want you warm, but it only make me colder when it's over, so I can't tonight, baby. No, not baby anymore. If I need you, I'll just use your simple name. And we'll kisses on the cheek from now on. And in a little while, we'll only have to wave. So perfectly captures how damn painful accepting a breakup is and how awkward and strained changing the position that person has in your life is. Like, even when the breakup isn't explosive, the utter loss of intimacy is oddly brutal to accept and go through. And that track is so resonant of that theme for me. Just like, you were once like the most easy person to be around, but now I have to pretend I don't know everything about you and just like pretend you're not the most important thing in the world, which is so difficult. So yeah, I adore that track. So yeah, if you ever see a friend listening to Love Ridden on repeat for 8 days on your Spotify friend list, like, message that person. They need
Are
help
you
and love.
okay?
Yep. My second favorite track is Fast As You Can, a very compelling and unique song topic about loving someone while also dealing with mental illness and the frustrations that come with it, how isolating it can be. The line, "Oh darling, it's so sweet, you think you know how crazy I am." What a fantastic line. And especially like watching that alongside the music video, which is just her sneering at the camera basically for 3 minutes and like hard cut shots of her face just jittering all over the place. It's pretty amazing. And it really encapsulates a lot of the themes and motifs of the album in a very small, compact way. The ideas of pushing away your lover or and knowing that they don't really understand you, or that when they try to, it's always condescending or feigned sympathy. There's an aching vulnerability and loneliness at the center of all this like prickly exterior in the track. And I love how this track is structured, where there's a real hardness around the whole track, but then right in the middle of the song in the bridge is that like aching core, and that features my favorite lyric on the whole album. Sometimes my mind don't shift and shake, but most of the time it does. And I get to the place where I'm begging for a lift, or I'll drown in the wonders and the was. And I'll be your girl if you say it's a gift and you give me more of your drugs. Yeah, I'll be your pet if you just tell me it's a gift, because I'm tired of whys, choking on whys, just need a little because. And the idea of like being at a point where you hate yourself so much and are so sick of your brain that you're like, I would completely go through like ego death. Like, I would annihilate myself just if you would just say I'm yours. Like, if you would just take care of me and like tell me you love me. And like the kind of Fiona's exploration of the self detriment that comes with completely surrendering to someone else in the name of love is completely stunning and good. And many a tears, my friends, many a tears. Many a tears. Watch the music video. There's a great moment where right after that bridge, that whole time she's talking through a fogged window, and while she's singing that vulnerable bit, she's like wiping the fog away so you can see her face. And then when it hits back to the jaunty jazz instrumental, the fog like drifts back in and covers her eyes, and then like her mouth is just moving in a very strange way. It's amazing, like that kind of like completely obscuring the lover after letting them in because you're afraid of yourself in that moment. Directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Anyway,
yeah, I think that's pretty fucking weird that he did all of these. Did they never like sit down and go like, Hey, this is really sad.
Are you okay? Am
What's
I
going?
muting you?
I know we
Are
have problems, but
there must have been a moment where Paul Thomas Anderson was listening to the album and he was like, are we the baddies?
yes, exactly.
Anyway, and my favorite track on the album is the closer, I Know. This song is so fucked up. Fiona really tried to hurt us with music like this. It's not okay what she did on this album. I don't know who gave her permission to break my heart like this. It's so sad. It's devastating to me. Um, I I guess my favorite thing about this track is how, other than it just being a gorgeous piano ballad about dating someone who is involved with someone else, and you just like you don't know where you stand in their life, and you don't know how important you are to them, and you know that it be like that sometimes.
Do be like that sometimes.
And my favorite thing about this track is how she plays around with the words "I know." So throughout the track, she uses the term "I know" to say she knows about his sins. She knows that he's involved with other women, and like she knows how complicated it is. And there's insinuation she's trying to play it cool and like, oh, I don't really care. I'm the cool girl. And then with how the melody goes, every time the I know bit is sung, the refrain, the melody tells you like when that chorus is coming, right? So at the end of the song, it recontextualizes the phrase because she sings, and if it gets too late for you to find you love me and tell me so, it's okay. You don't have to tell me. And then silence. And the melody implies another I know, but it's like an unspoken I know. And this is so genius. Like the suggestion of I know, and the ambiguity of that. Like, what does she know? Does he really love her? Or is she saying she knows that he doesn't love her? I love how malleable that ending is, because like no matter what your situation is, you can kind of project onto it. And if we're going to take the saddest approach of like her admitting she knows he's never going to say he loves her as she needs to be loved, the fact that it's just silent, it's just a thing that is thought, implies acceptance. And just the genius of like basically writing a silent thought in that moment of just like thinking, yeah, I know they're gone. It's the most tender and beautiful way you could end an album like this, and it's one of the most genius album endings ever, and this is one of the best albums ever, and I love it. It's so good. I'm not going to cry. My least favorite track is a limp. It's a perfect album. So this track is still good, and I really love the "So Call Me Crazy, Hold Me Down, Make Me Cry, Get Off Now, Baby." Like that's so cathartic. But yeah, the '90s production is where that bugs me in this track. The electronic production in the quieter moments, it kind of sounds like bubbling underwater or something. It's really weird, and like I'm really happy that like moving on in Fiona's career, I feel like she has way more control over like the production, especially after Idle Wheel. It just feels like it's just her doing her own thing. It's not like imbued with the production standards of the time. And here I feel like this track has been a bit dated by that kind of production style. Overall, I'm gonna give this the strongest of recommends I could give an album. I really love it, obviously. And I hope it helps people at home get through hard times as it has helped me, and know that we can all, even if you are currently in the mindset of this album, we could all one day reach Fetch the Bolt Cutters like level of brain. Like one day we can all become mums and protect everyone. Like in the way Fiona is currently protecting the world with her genius. So that is a piece of hope.
Aww.
But yeah, I love this album, and yeah.
Yay.
So that's our first Fiona. Next week is Halloween, which is super exciting. Super exciting. So Mattie, what is our Halloween episode? What are we doing?
Okay, I've got a doozy for you. I'm not gonna lie. I've cooked up something
no idea
good.
what's coming.
So, I want to cover in each year of the podcast at least one. This is for it's for the audience too. At least one trilogy, and hopefully at least one director's filmography. And I like either or. As long as I get one of those, I'll be happy. And I think, well, I'm banking on a trilogy for this one.
Oh shit! Okay, I know I'm gonna.
And I'm thinking for Halloween we do an extra long episode on the first 3 Nightmare on Elm Street films.
Oh, I love you so much. Oh shit! You're perfect. You're the perfect.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that. I knew that would make you happy. I think the first 3 are really beloved films, and also, I think it's a nice neat
1 and 3.
Yeah, probably. Because after 3, there is no longer any involvement from Wes Craven. Wes Craven is actually only involved in 1 and 3, so. But we're gonna talk about it, warts and all, and we're gonna have a lovely, spooky Halloweeny time. Because we don't miss out on Halloween on this fucking podcast.
What's fucked up is I was building up to watch Elm Street 3 for the first time tonight, and I'd been listening to Now Playing Podcasts retrospective on the series, so I have intensely fresh in my head the first 3 films. I haven't seen part 2 yet because every time I listen to the Now Playing episode in part 2, they're like, please don't watch part 2. It is the worst thing ever. So I am genuinely so fucking excited for us to watch and talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Obviously, we'll get there, but basically they rushed out a sequel in like 8 months, not knowing what made the first one good. And then the third one is like the real sequel, which brings back the real characters. But the second one's just weird, fucked up, like, why did this happen, Phil?
The second one came out less than a year afterwards.
Yeah. It's basically like a spin-off. They just wanted to make money.
Yeah, that sucks.
It was a studio who did it, yeah.
Yeah, fuck you.
But I'm hyped for that. That's awesome. I'm
very awesome. Hyped. I'm so glad you're so happy. Well, tune in for that. And that's everything. Woo! Oh, thanks very much for listening. Like, subscribe, comment, rate, bananas, follow. Goodbye.
Yeah, get going. Get out of here.